We got a bunch of item and rune changes for 26.10. OP picks from last patch like Zed and Nefiri are being nerfed, while Zeri, who fell all the way down to C tier, is receiving a pretty big buff. All this and much more in today's video as we give you guys an extensive breakdown of all the changes and a complete update to the solo queue tier list for every single role. Throughout the rift, a great migration occurs every 30 seconds. The minion wave, a vital food source for any climber who knows how to harvest it. But here, we observe one of nature's most baffling behaviors. The hard-stuck player abandoning his food source to chase a kill he will never get. Without proper wave management, he cannot survive, he cannot grow, he cannot climb. In the wild, this tragedy plays out thousands of times every minute. But today, something is different. Today, he discovered a powerful new tool. SkillCapped Season 16 macro and wave control courses, designed to teach even the most lost climber the secrets of the rift, walking you through every minute of the game step by step, from the very first wave all the way to closing out games cleanly. And unlike other guides in the wild, we focus on teaching you the macro concepts that actually work in solo queue, and most importantly, strategies you can execute without having to rely on the rest of your pack, which paired with our newly updated Essentials courses covers everything you need to master Season 16 for every role, giving you the complete roadmap to climb this season. And best of all, you can do it all completely risk-free, as you're backed up by a rank-up guarantee. If you somehow don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service, then you get every penny back. For the first time in his life, he is no longer hard stuck. Check out the link in the description below for an exclusive one-time discount code. So let's begin by looking at all the item and rune changes, and first up, it's a buff to Lichbane. The AP ratio on Lichbane's passive damage is going up from 40 to 45%, while movement speed is being increased from 4 to 6%. One champ in specific who should be liking these buffs the most is Evelynn. Evelynn already builds Lichbane as a core purchase, and the reason she likes the buff more than others is due to the fact that she builds Rabadon's early on in the game. Rabadon's is generally Eve's second purchase, and because it offers up so much AP, she's going to benefit from that ratio buff a lot more. Extra movement speed is also very nice to have for a jungler who wants to be flanking. Other than Evelynn, a few more picks who will get indirectly stronger for 26.10 due to being Lichbane users include Fizz, Nidalee, Twisted Fate, Katarina, Zoe, and Gragas. Echo will be one to watch with Lichbane because it used to be his most popular rush prior to Dusk and Dawn being added to the game, so now that Dusk and Dawn got nerfed last patch and Lichbane is buffed, we could see priority shift back to Lichbane on Echo. The new starting item Doran's Bow has landed in a weaker state, so they will be buffing it by adding an additional 2 AD to the item. So gold efficiency-wise, Doran's Bow is actually better than Doran's Blade, but that's only if you can really take advantage of the attack speed it provides. Item will still be more niche because not having that 80 health from Doran's Blade leaves you a lot less margin for error early on in lane, but if you can take advantage of the attack speed, and if you're confident in your matchup, then taking Doran's Bow is definitely worth it. The other new starting item, Doran's Helm, is receiving a buff with its health going up from 110 to 130. Prior to this change, there weren't a ton of champs who were liking Doran's Helm over Doran's Shield, besides K'Sante being a heavy outlier. K'Sante had been winning about 3% more with Doran's Helm relative to Doran's Shield all throughout 26.9, so we should expect that after this buff, it just becomes the most optimal starting item for him. The reason K'Sante really likes Doran's Helm is because the item offers up magic resists and armor, and K'Sante's abilities scale off of his resists. On other tanks, Doran's Helm should still be inferior to Doran's Shield in terms of effective health during the laning phase, so unless you're in a really easy matchup, then going Doran's Shield will remain the better play. Storm Raider's Surge landed in a really weak state in 26.9, so Riot will be giving it 2 buffs for this patch. Movement speed duration is going up from 3 to 4 seconds, while the movement speed amount is increased as well from 40 to 48% for melee and from 30 to 36% for ranged. Champions who were taking Storm Raiders the most in 26.9 who will indirectly benefit from these buffs include Hecarim, Ryze, Vlad, Orianna, Galio, Darius, Taliyah, Jace, and Gragas. Even after the hotfix nerfs Riot issued to Deathfire Touch, it has continued to overperform, so they are slapping on another nerf with the damage per second dropping from 4 scaling to 12 to 3 scaling to 12. So a nerf across the board until you hit level 18, but we don't think it's a change that will kill the rune by any means. Same champs who were good with Deathfire last patch should remain strong for 26.10. Especially those who have been abusing the Deathfire with Black Cleaver combo like Smolder and Senna. They won't be going anywhere this patch, as Riot has stated that they won't be nerfing this interaction until 26.11. So continue to abuse these setups in Smolder and Senna, and if you want the full breakdown of the builds so you know exactly what to take, we've got them up on our new free build site for you guys. So the new boots, Gluttonous Greaves were really overperforming on a select few champs in 26.9, and Riot will be nerfing them for 26.10. Cost of the boots is going up from 950 to 1000 gold, while the Omnivamp per stack is being lowered from 1 to 0.6%, and max stacks is going from 6 to 10. So you'll gain the same amount of Omnivamp at max stacks as before, but you'll now need 4 additional takedowns to reach max stacks. So on champs who can really benefit from the Omnivamp, we still expect Gluttonous to be a good pickup, as Uxin, Samira, Smolder, Gwen, Riven, Neela, Shyvana, Rengar, Naafiri, Olaf, Draven, Zed, Briar, Talon, and Vlad are a bunch of the best users. So there aren't any top lane specific changes for 26.10, which means the tier list won't be looking much different from last patch. We're still going to have both Kayle and Teemo up in the OP tier, as they are really strong with the new static Shiv. Umbessa and Wukong are getting changed for this patch, and even though both are more popular in the jungle, the changes will influence their strength in top lane as well. Umbessa dropped to around a 46% win rate after her recent R nerf, so she's getting more damage on her Q and more healing from R in 26.10. Umbessa was tracking as a C tier pick last patch, so we probably should have had her placed there, and as a result of her buffs, we see her slotting in as a B tier pick. And then for Wukong, he literally has a play rate below 1% in top lane, so it's pretty hard to get a good read on his actual power level in meta, but he really isn't as bad as his play rate may suggest, so we've got him placed in the A tier. Wukong top is still a super good pick into Darius, so if you're someone who hates the Darius matchup, then being able to pull out Wukong as a counter is really valuable. So looking at those Umbessa changes, she will be gaining some damage on Q in the early game, as max health damage is up from 2 scaling to 6% to 4 scaling to 6%. Q damage to monsters is going down though from 125 to 75. R healing from abilities is up from 10 scaling to 15% to 15 scaling to 20%, while R healing effectiveness against monsters is dropping from 40 to 25%. So these are straight up buffs for top lane Umbessa, but jungle will probably end up more on the neutral side. Q damage to monsters going from 125 to 75 is such a harsh change on its own, but when you factor in that Q max health damage is increased, we find out that it's not really that bad. Looking at the comparison clips here, we can see Umbessa Q dealing 168 damage to red buff in 26.9, and then it's down to 165 in 26.10. So despite Q damage to monsters going down by 50, the max health buff really lessens the blow, and you only end up losing 3 damage on your Q early on. So could Q damage going up actually outweigh the fact that you'll have a slightly weaker clear? It definitely could, but even then, we don't see Umbessa getting a whole lot better, so we're going to keep her placed in the C tier for now. Moving on to the Wukong buffs now, we've got 3 different changes, as his W clone damage is going up from 30 scaling to 50 to 40 scaling to 60. W clone duration is being increased from 3.25 to 4 seconds, while E attack speed is going up from 35 scaling to 55% to 40 scaling to 60%. So nothing that should really push Wukong over the top, but enough to have him move out of the B tier and into A for 26.10. Naafiri jungle is going to be targeted with a few nerfs for this patch, as her passive monster damage is dropping from 155 to 145%. W mana cost is going up as well, from 60 at all ranks to 85, scaling to 65. Nothing overly impactful, but Naafiri was just holding on to an S tier spot as a jungler prior to these nerfs, so we're going to be dropping her into A for 26.10. An OP tier jungler from last patch will be nerfed in 26.10, as Shyvana is losing some health per level, with it dropping from 100 to 95. W cooldown is nerfed as well, going from 13 scaling to 9 seconds to 13 scaling to 10 seconds. Warranted nerfs with how much Shyvana was overperforming, but they really don't seem harsh enough to drastically reduce her power level, which means we're going to keep her up in the OP tier for the time being. There's a chance the nerfs are enough to drop her down to S, but we really can't see her falling any further than that. These Lee Sin changes are without question the most interesting set of changes we're getting this patch, so let's break it all down. W shield value is being lowered from 70 scaling to 250 to 60 scaling to 240. However, the cooldown of W is being changed from 12 seconds when used against non-champions and 6 when used on champions to now 7 seconds no matter which target you use W on. Lee will also now gain his shield from W when jumping to a minion or ward. So to sum it up, a slight nerf to shield value, a 1 second nerf to W cooldown if you were using it on a champion, but a heavy buff to the spell if used on a ward or minion, with the cooldown being 5 seconds shorter, and you'll now gain the shield. We definitely see this being a net buff for Lee Sin, because a lot of the time when you're ganking or trying to enter a fight, you'll be using your W on a ward or minion, so that should outweigh the small nerf for when using it on champions. It looks like Riot thinks the W change will be a net buff too, because they are compensation nerfing Lee's E damage, with the AD ratio going from 100 to 90%. And then R is receiving a really cool quality of life buff, as when you kill a target with your R, their body will still be sent flying. So on paper, these changes do look like net buffs to Lee Sin. We could definitely be overestimating the W buff though, and E nerf could just outweigh that, but over a large enough sample, it feels like the W change should be net positive for Lee. So where he lands power-wise is tough to say, so we're gonna keep him in the A tier for now and circle back for the updated tier list if need be. Riot's back at it again with a another off-meta jungle buff, and this time it's going to Quinn. Quinn will be gaining more damage on her passive, as it's being increased by 50 against monsters. Q is now also going to deal 50% increased damage to monsters. And then our mana cost is dropping from 100 to 50 at rank 1 in the spell, from 50 to 25 at rank 2, and will remain at 0 mana cost at rank 3. So we've got absolutely no data to go off of to predict how strong Quinn jungle could actually be as a result of these buffs. So for now, we're just going to hold off on giving her a rating until she sees some play in 26.10, and we'll update for the mid-patch tier list if she's actually viable. So for the jungle tier list, OP tier won't be looking any different from last patch, as we'll have Shyvana, Warwick, and Nocturne locking down the spots. Evelynn is one to watch out for this patch because of the Lichbane buffs, as we've already had her placed in the S tier, for we expect her to be one of the better junglers in 26.10. We actually just uploaded the optimal full clear for Evelynn to the clear course on our website, which is a course our subscribers absolutely love, as clearing your jungle the fastest is the easiest way for you to improve as a jungler very quickly, and we've got full clears updated for Season 16 for all meta junglers. Nidalee is the one other jungler who should get a bit stronger due to those Lichbane buffs, so we'll keep track of the changes throughout the patch, and if they are impactful enough, then Nid may be in need of a move into the jungle A tier. Keep an eye on Echo with Lichbane as well, because the old core build of Nashers into Lichbane could look to make a comeback. Hecarim is the one jungler who will be liking the Storm Raiders buffs the most, so he should be a good A tier pick for 26.10. Heck was already an A tier pick as long as you were running Conqueror over Storm Raiders last patch, but Storm Raiders should now be an option as well. Galio has been one of the bigger losers from Phase Rush being converted to Storm Raiders Surge, and even with Surge buff for this patch, Galio is going to receive a few direct buffs too. Q mana cost is going down from 70 scaling to 90 to 60 scaling to 80. E damage will be changed from 90 scaling to 250 to 100 scaling to 240, while the AP ratio is up from 90 to 100%. And then R damage is now going to scale with 100% bonus magic resist, so if you were to build Merc Treads with Hollow Radiance, then that's going to add around 60 more damage to Galio's R. So with all these buffs going through, we think Galio should gain enough power to escape the mid lane B tier, as we're moving him into A. Anivia is next on the change list for mid lane, and she's getting nerfed, with base armor dropping from 21 to 19, while armor growth is being lowered from 4.5 to 4.1. This nerf is actually most likely targeted towards top lane Anivia, because she has been getting more popular, and by nerfing her armor, it will negatively influence her top lane strength more than mid lane, since you see more physical damage champs played top. Regardless, it is a nerf for mid lane as well, but we don't see it being significant enough to drop Anivia down the tier list, so we'll be keeping her placed in S. Zed ended up as an OP tier mid laner in 26.9 because of the item changes, so it's not much of a surprise to see him immediately nerfed. E damage will be lowered, with the base dropping by 10 at max rank, and bonus AD ratio going from 80 to 70%. Passive percent health damage is nerfed as well, going from 6 to 5% from levels 1 through 6, from 8 to 7.5% from levels 7 through 16, and will remain the same at 10% level 17 onwards. So definitely significant enough nerfs to where Zed will be losing his OP tier slot for 26.10, as we are going to be moving him into the S tier. There's a chance Zed could fall as far as A tier because Gluttonous Greaves are nerfed this patch too, and that could spill over and affect him even more negatively, but for now, we're going to keep him in S. So for the mid lane tier list in 26.10, with Zed dropping out of the OP tier, moving up to take his spot is going to be Fizz. Fizz is going to benefit from the Lichbane buffs, as the item is his staple rush, so the fact Fizz was already performing extremely well prior to this Lichbane buff, we expect him to be a top percentile pick moving forward. Lots of indirect changes to items for this patch that could influence a bunch of mid laners, as the Deathfire Touch nerfs, Gluttonous Greaves nerfs, Lichbane buffs, and Storm Raiders Surge buffs will all be of impact. For someone like Vlad, he was actually performing better with Deathfire Touch last patch, but now that Storm Raiders is buffed, we could see that flip in Storm's favor. Ryze and Orianna should be liking the Storm Raiders buffs a bunch, but they were already heavily underperforming last patch, so we don't think the rune buffs will actually make them that much better. Galio is likely the mid laner who sees the biggest spike in power for 26.10 because of his direct buffs, and also the fact he will benefit from the Storm Raiders buffs. So moving on to ADC now, Riot completely gutted Zeri last patch from the changes they issued, so they are giving her a bunch of damage back for 26.10. Q damage is going up from 21 scaling to 33 to 22 scaling to 38. We can see the damage go from 113 all the way to 126 per Q when you are level 9, so this is a huge boost in DPS for Zeri. Excess attack speed to AD conversion is being increased from 50 to 60%, while there's a bug fix buff going through for Zeri's R, so that she now extends the duration by the correct 2.5 seconds instead of just 1.5 seconds. Something that was also dragging down Zeri's overall win rate last patch was the fact that 25% of Zeri players were building static Shiv and only winning 44% of the time. Shiv is a complete bait item on Zeri, so continue rushing one of Yuntal or Stormrazor. So as long as you aren't building Shiv, and with these buffs going through, Zeri won't be a C tier pick anymore, as we're pushing her up into the A tier. Ashe is the only other ADC being adjusted for this patch, as she will be nerfed, with her Q damage dropping from 110 110 scaling to 140% to 110 scaling to 130%. So more of a mid-game nerf to Ashe, which should land somewhat impactful, but not enough to drastically lower her strength in meta, as we'll only be dropping her from OP into S. So for the ADC tier list in 26.10, we expect for Smolder and Brand to remain two outliers who are extremely OP. Even though Deathfire Touch is getting nerfed, the interaction between Black Cleaver and Deathfire is not nerfed until 26.11, so you'll have another whole patch to abuse Smolder in his strong state. Brand will get slightly weaker due to the Deathfire nerfs, but he has been performing at a completely insane level prior to the nerfs, and therefore we can't see the nerfs actually dropping his relative power that much. Even if Brand lost 1% win rate, he would still be at an OP tier level, and that's kind of what we're expecting from the Deathfire nerfs. So with Zeri moving out of the C tier, we're shuffling around the bottom of the ADC tier list a little bit, dropping Ezreal and Yanara. Not only is Zeri quite bad with the new static Shiv, but Kai'Sa is quite overrated with it as well. Kraken is just winning more than Shiv on Kai'Sa, and it's not like Shiv is terrible, but if you're playing into a comp who is tankier, you should definitely be running Kraken still. Two champs who are actually quite good with the reworked Shiv include Varus and Kalista. Reason being is that the Shiv proc will apply Varus W on all targets hit, while Shiv proc applies Kalista's E on all targets hit. So they just have better synergy with the item compared to Kai'Sa and Zeri, who don't actually benefit from the Shiv proc nearly as much. This is one of the first times we haven't had Kalista rated as a C tier ADC for solo queue, because if you're rushing Shiv into Rageblade on her, then she's actually in a viable spot. There won't be a single support champion change for 26.10, so we'll have the tier list lined up nearly the exact same as last patch. We were expecting for Seraphine to receive some sort of nerf, but for the time being, she's left unchanged, which means she's back in the OP tier as the best support for solo queue. Deathfire Touch nerfs are the only changes that will have some impact on the support role, as champs like Brand and Senna get a bit weaker. We're going to move Brand down into the A tier, and then we'll keep Senna in S for now, because the Black Cleaver interaction with Deathfire will remain in the game for another patch, and as long as that's the thing, we don't think she falls in strength that much from the Deathfire nerf. Galio support is pretty niche, but he will get a bit better this patch from the buffs he's receiving. Q mana cost going down and more base damage on E in the early game will give him a slightly better laning phase. Probably not enough to result in a move up the tier list, but worth considering as a counter pick for hook supports like Blitz and Knot. Anivia's support is another super niche pick that has been getting a bit more popular lately, and with her armor nerf, that will hurt her a bit in the support role. We already had her rated lower down in the B tier though, so we still feel she'll be around that level after the nerf. But while lists like these show you what to play, our brand new Season 16 Essentials courses for every role teach you how to win, each designed to walk you through every stage of the game from start to finish. From the exact trading and recall timers you need to win lane, to the mid-game macro decisions 99% of players get completely wrong, all the way to the team fighting tips and tricks challengers abuse to always deal the highest damage possible. Whether you're a top laner in the most unfavorable matchup possible, a mid laner having to deal with everybody in your lane 24/7, a jungler trying to balance ganking with farming, an ADC stuck trying to hard carry with a support who just exists to grief you, or a support that's struggling to carry games on your own. Our Essentials courses are tailor-made to focus on the exact concepts that actually matter for climbing on your role in your elo. Check them out today, completely risk-free, using the link in the pinned comment or description below, as if you don't climb at least 5 divisions, you get every penny back. So there you have it, everyone. That's a complete look at the solo queue tier list for every role as we head into 26.10. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.